Welcome to Islamic Finance Unboxed. In this episode, we will think together. What if the U.S. gold reserve is a myth? Crypto, debt, and the rise of Islamic finance. Imagine waking up to the headline. The U.S. gold reserves are not what we thought. A country built on the promise of financial security, suddenly exposed. What happens if the gold that underpins America's credibility is little more than a myth? Would the dollar collapse overnight? Would the U.S. turn to crypto, or even digital debt, to keep the system alive? And could this be the moment Islamic finance, with its insistence on real, asset-backed money, steps into the spotlight? Stay tuned, because in this video, we're diving deep into one of the most shocking financial what-ifs of our time. The frozen U.S. gold stock, the rise of crypto debt, and why Islamic finance may hold answers the world desperately needs. The U.S. gold story, from Bretton Woods to frozen value. Let's rewind to 1944. The world had just come out of the devastation of World War II, and global leaders met at Bretton Woods to establish a new financial system. The U.S. dollar became the anchor of global trade because it was backed by gold. 1 ounce of gold equaled $35, and other currencies were pegged to the dollar. But in 1971, President Richard Nixon closed the gold window. The U.S. dollar was no longer directly exchangeable for gold. From that moment, the dollar became fiat money, backed not by metal, but by trust. Today, the U.S. claims to hold around 8,133 tons of gold. Sounds huge, right? Here's the twist. Those reserves are valued at just $42.22 an ounce on the government's books, a price frozen since the 1970s. At market value, they'd be worth hundreds of billions. But on paper, barely $11 billion. This frozen accounting raises a question. Is America's gold stock real, symbolic, or simply a number no one dares to challenge? What if the gold isn't really there? Now imagine this scenario. Independent audits reveal that U.S. gold reserves are either overstated, inaccessible, or worse, missing. What would happen? First, confidence would collapse. The dollar's global dominance rests on trust, not gold. But if even the symbol of gold is questioned, investors worldwide could panic. Second, Treasury markets would shake. With U.S. debt now exceeding $35 trillion, confidence in repayment depends on America's credibility. If gold myths unravel, nations holding U.S. bonds, from China to Japan to Saudi Arabia, might rush for the exits. And third, alternatives would rise. Gold prices would skyrocket. BRICS nations, already pushing for gold-backed trade, would gain influence. And whispers of a post-dollar world would get a whole lot louder. The U.S. response: crypto debt and digital dollars. So what would Washington do? The U.S. will never willingly surrender dollar dominance. Instead, it might pivot to the tools of the future. Option 1. A digital dollar, CBDC. A blockchain-based dollar controlled by the Federal Reserve. Programmable, traceable, and instantly transferable worldwide. Imagine U.S. debt not as bonds, but as digital tokens. Option 2. Tokenized Treasuries. This is already happening. BlackRock and J.P. Morgan are experimenting with U.S. government debt traded on blockchain platforms. Investors could buy fractions of treasuries as if they were crypto coins. Option 3. Crypto-backed settlements. While unlikely to embrace Bitcoin directly, the U.S. might experiment with crypto-denominated debt payments, especially if rival nations begin trading oil or commodities in Bitcoin, stablecoins, or digital yuan. In other words, if the gold myth cracks, America's answer won't be to admit defeat. It will be to reinvent the dollar in digital form. The global reaction: BRICS, gold, and new powers. Meanwhile, the rest of the world won't just sit and watch. BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, are already pushing de-dollarization, exploring gold-backed trade settlements. If U.S. gold credibility collapses, their momentum doubles overnight. Europe and the Middle East could expand euro-based and dinar-linked settlements. Saudi Arabia has already hinted at selling oil in non-dollar currencies. And crypto adoption could accelerate. If institutional trust is shaken, people may seek decentralized alternatives, even with their volatility. The global financial order would shift from U.S.-centric to multipolar faster than anyone expected. Where does Islamic finance fit in? Now here's the part most people ignore, yet it could be the biggest opportunity of all. Islamic finance operates on one simple principle. Money must be tied to real assets. No interest, no speculation, no debt detached from reality. That means Sukuk, Islamic bonds, are backed by tangible projects like infrastructure, energy, or real estate, not just promises printed on paper. If trust in U.S. fiat and gold evaporates, Islamic finance looks more relevant than ever. Imagine a global investor comparing two options: a U.S. Treasury bond, based on faith in a government caught in a gold scandal, or a Sukuk, directly linked to a highway, an oil field, or a renewable energy project. Which one feels more secure? For decades, Islamic finance was seen as niche, limited to Muslim-majority countries. But in a post-gold trust world, its asset-backed model could become a global necessity. So here's the big question. If the U.S. gold reserve is a myth, will America double down on digital debt and crypto tricks? Or will the world finally turn to systems that tie money to reality, like Islamic finance? Because at the end of the day, trust is everything. And when trust in fiat, in gold, and even in government begins to crumble, the search for alternatives becomes not just an idea, but a survival instinct. Maybe, just maybe, the world isn't ready for a U.S. crypto debt empire. Maybe what it really needs is finance with roots in truth, assets, and fairness. So what do you think? If the U.S. gold reserve turned out to be a myth, would crypto save the dollar? Or would the world finally look to something like Islamic finance? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this video eye-opening, don't forget to hit like, share it with someone who loves finance debates, and subscribe for more deep dives right here on Islamic Finance Unboxed. Because the financial future may not be written in gold, but in the choices we make today.